When Rachel first inherited the house from her grandparents, she was both elated and uneasy. The old Victorian mansion loomed at the edge of a forest, its tall, narrow windows staring out like vacant eyes. The house was a relic of a bygone era, filled with dark wood paneling, ornate furnishings, and the scent of dust and history. It had been in her family for generations, each member leaving behind whispers of their lives in the echoing halls. From the moment Rachel stepped inside, a chill crept over her, though it was the height of summer. She shrugged off the feeling, attributing it to the daunting task of sorting through decades of accumulated belongings. As she wandered through the rooms, memories of childhood visits surfaced, along with an odd sense of something forgotten, just out of reach. In the attic, amidst cobwebs and old trunks, Rachel found a small, intricately carved wooden box. It was tucked away in a corner, almost hidden beneath an old quilt. The box was beautiful, but it emitted an unsettling aura, as if it were silently waiting to be found. Curious, she opened it to reveal a single, antique key. Her grandfather had often told stories of hidden rooms and secret passages within the house. As a child, Rachel had delighted in these tales, but now, as an adult, she felt a growing unease. Holding the key, she wandered the house, testing it in every lock she could find, until she reached the basement. The basement door creaked open, revealing a stone staircase leading down into darkness. Rachel hesitated, but a strange compulsion drove her onward. At the bottom of the stairs, the key fit perfectly into a small, iron door. With a deep breath, she turned the key and the door swung open to reveal a hidden room. Inside was a small, windowless space, bare except for a single, ancient mirror mounted on the far wall. The mirror's frame was ornate, adorned with grotesque faces and twisted shapes. Rachel's reflection stared back at her, but something was off. Her reflection's eyes seemed darker, more menacing, and they followed her every move with a predatory intensity. Compelled by an unseen force, Rachel reached out and touched the mirror's surface. A sharp chill shot through her hand, and she snatched it back. The reflection's expression twisted into a sinister smile. Panicked, she turned to leave, but the door slammed shut, trapping her inside. The room grew colder, and the air felt heavy, suffocating. Rachel's reflection began to move independently, stepping out of the mirror and advancing towards her. She backed away, heart pounding, until she was pressed against the cold stone wall. "Who are you?" Rachel whispered, voice trembling. The reflection's smile widened, eyes glinting with malice. "I am you, Rachel. The you that you fear, the you that you hide." Rachel shook her head, trying to deny the figure's words, but the reflection's presence grew stronger, more tangible. It reached out, and Rachel felt a cold hand clasp around her wrist. She struggled, but her strength was no match for the force pulling her towards the mirror. With a final, desperate cry, Rachel was dragged into the mirror. She felt a disorienting sensation, like being torn apart and reassembled, and then she was standing on the other side, looking out into the room. Her reflection was gone, but she was trapped in its place, a prisoner of the cursed mirror. As days turned to weeks, Rachel's mind began to fracture. She could see the house through the mirror, watch as the seasons changed, but she was powerless to escape. The only company she had was her own dark reflection, which taunted and tormented her without end. Years later, a distant relative inherited the house. They found the hidden room in the mirror, now dusty and forgotten. As they looked into the glass, Rachel's eyes, wild and pleading, stared back. They reached out to touch the surface, just as Rachel had done. The cycle began anew. The relative was pulled into the mirror, and Rachel was set free. She stumbled out into the room, disoriented and hollow. As she fled the house, she glanced back at the mirror. The awfully familiar face of her relative now stared out, eyes wide with terror. Decades later, a young lady enters the house. In her hands is the title deed to this Victorian mansion. As luck would have it, this lady found the wooden box and in it, the keys to the basement. And somewhere in the shadows, Rachel watched, always feeling a strange, unsettling familiarity with each each turn of the key and each reflection in the mirror. Forever trapped in the mirror, this is how Rachel will spend the rest of her days for eternity.